86%. That was the occupancy rate at five-star hotels across Palm Jumeirah in January 2026. But just 6 weeks later, that number collapsed to only 15%. A true financial earthquake had occurred. 37,000 flights were canceled within the first 10 days alone. 226,000 short-term bookings on online platforms vanished overnight. Dubai's financial market was forced to shut down for 2 consecutive sessions for the first time in 3 years. And when it reopened, the real estate index had lost 21% of its value, wiping out an entire year's growth in just a matter of hours. The region is currently bleeding up to $600 million per day as tourism revenue disappears. But do you know what's truly frightening? Beneath all those numbers, beneath the sand, engineered rock, and dreams poured into the Persian Gulf, this island has been quietly sinking by about 0.2 inches per year for over a decade. This is the story of what happens when the boldest city ever built faces the one thing it was never designed to withstand. Is this a temporary crisis, or the beginning of the end for an icon? You can spend tens of millions of dollars for a bay view, but you can't pay chloride ions to stop destroying your home. The waters of the Persian Gulf are not like those off Florida or California. They have extremely high salinity, ranging from 0.33 to 0.38 pounds per gallon, far above the ocean average. Imagine those salt molecules as silent intruders. They seep through concrete pores, reach the steel reinforcement, and destroy its thin protective layer. Combine that with humidity frequently above 80% and scorching heat that can push concrete surface temperatures up to 158 degrees Fahrenheit, and you have a perfect recipe for destruction. As steel rusts, it expands 2 to 4 times in volume, creating immense internal pressure. The result? Concrete begins to spall, exposing a decaying skeleton, what engineers often call concrete cancer. It seems nature isn't particularly impressed by Dubai's VIP guest list. According to multiple studies, in harsh environments like the Gulf, reinforced concrete structures often begin to lose load-bearing capacity after just 10 to 15 years without proactive maintenance. Most villas on the Palm Fronds were completed between 2006 and 2010. By 2026, we are standing right at the tipping point of that timeline. Vibrocompaction technology can create a stable foundation, but it cannot protect low-rise villas from salt-laden air and rising sea levels. The hairline cracks in plaster that people often dismiss are actually warning bells for structural failure. It's like owning a classic Cadillac but leaving it on the beach for 2 decades without any cover or rust protection. Repairing a house on land is one thing, but maintaining a villa on a palm frond in the middle of the sea is something else entirely. You need divers, barges, and specialized marine equipment. Logistics costs can be 3 to 6 times higher than urban projects. Currently, annual service fees in these ultra-luxury areas are climbing, with high-end apartments reaching $16, $19 per square foot. For a 5,000 square foot villa, basic service fees alone can cost tens of thousands of dollars per year, not including major structural overhauls that can reach up to $400,000 per unit. But the issue isn't just money, it's who will pay it. Data shows that around 25% of villas on the fronds are either vacant or lack regular maintenance. A large portion of owners are global investors, people who see these properties as a store of value rather than a home. They are often absent, and the general tendency is to minimize maintenance costs to maximize short-term returns. While large developers like Nakheel have wisely shifted toward a fee-based management model, responsibility for structural maintenance has been fully privatized to individual owners. Without a sufficiently large centralized reserve fund, we are witnessing a classic economic scenario. The tragedy of the commons. When each individual tries to avoid responsibility, the overall value of the entire area declines together. Perhaps owning an address on Palm Island in 2026 is no longer the symbol of financial savvy people once believed. Instead, it feels like holding a first-class ticket on a ship slowly being corroded by seawater from below, while everyone around you is still busy raising glasses and celebrating the marble facade above. What do you think? Is the price of this eternal luxury becoming too high? At its core, all 17 fronds and the Crescent area home to mega resorts, like the Royal Atlantis, are forced to funnel through a single artery, the trunk. Imagine trying to squeeze the traffic of a small city through a single toll gate. When the project was first outlined in 2001, it seems the vision was limited to quiet rows of low-rise villas. But then, greed or excessive optimism led to the approval of a wave of high-rise apartment complexes and massive hotels. Intersections at the entrance from Sheikh Zayed Road frequently record delays exceeding 45% during peak hours. In a place where the average household owns between 1.5 to 2 luxury cars, the roads seem to groan under a weight they were never designed to carry. And don't count on the monorail system. It feels more like an expensive sightseeing toy than a real transportation solution, as it doesn't even directly connect to the city's metro network. You spend thousands of dollars per night on a luxury apartment, you probably expect privacy and exclusivity. But what's exclusive about being stuck in a long line of traffic just to exit your hotel? The concept of exclusive seems to be shaking. Recent surveys show that tourist satisfaction at Palm Jumeirah has dropped significantly compared to 5 years ago. The top reason? Inconvenient location. It seems the ultra-wealthy are beginning to realize that time is their most valuable asset, and they don't want to waste it sitting in a limousine inching forward. That's why capital is starting to migrate toward areas like Jumeirah Bay Island, where privacy is comparable but access is far smoother, or back to downtown Dubai, where everything is within walking distance. If you're an investor looking for rental yield, this might be the time to reconsider. Short-term renters via Airbnb or resort services tend to prioritize convenience. When getting to the city center takes too long, the island's appeal may no longer match what's printed on the brochures. But there's something even more concerning than money. With a single access structure like this, emergency response and security become more complicated than ever. Even a minor incident on the main road could turn the entire island into a literal isolated oasis where fire trucks and ambulances struggle through traffic just to do their jobs. In the era of 5-minute cities, where all daily needs are within reach, Palm Jumeirah seems to be moving against the sustainability trend. It's like a beautiful Rolex watch that runs slow exactly when you need it most. Would you be willing to trade your freedom for a luxurious address that's trapped by its own glamour? That's a question only those stuck in traffic on the trunk can truly answer. Do you remember the refreshing feeling of standing before the rolling waves at the Outer Banks or the strong coastal winds in Monterey? That's natural circulation. At Palm Jumeirah, the palm frond structure and massive breakwater system have eliminated most wave energy. The result? A surprising level of stagnation. According to hydrodynamic studies, water at the ends of the fronds has a residence time of up to 3 to 6 weeks to fully circulate. Compare that to just 2-4 days at natural open beaches. When water cannot circulate, combined with summer temperatures often above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, you get a perfect recipe for algae blooms. Organic decomposition under low oxygen conditions at the seabed produces hydrogen sulfide gas, better known as the smell of rotten eggs. Probably not the scent you expect after spraying some Tom Ford and stepping onto the balcony of your million-dollar villa, right? It seems the glamour of ocean-invading concrete structures is starting to lose its former appeal. Those who once dreamed of a marine paradise now face the reality that massive rocks and breakwaters are replacing natural scenery. Worse still, gradual subsidence and sand erosion require constant artificial replenishment, clouding waters that were once promised to be crystal clear. According to multiple reports, more than 70% of high-end tourists appear to be shifting toward destinations that respect natural ecosystems. In many eyes, Palm Jumeirah is gradually becoming a symbol of the era of overconsumption, a concept that feels somewhat outdated. As the new elite turns to truly ecological projects in Maldives or emerging sustainable developments, an artificial island consuming massive amounts of concrete may no longer be the top choice to show off on the latest iPhone. And here's the thing. A waterfront property only maintains premium value if the water in front of it is actually worth it. When the sea smells and loses its clarity, record-high rental prices may become a thing of the past. In reality, a clear divergence is already visible. Villas at the bases of the fronds, where water circulation is better, are holding value far better than those at the tips where stagnation is most evident. To address this issue, forced pumping systems or additional water channels must be considered. And guess who will bear these massive sunk costs? Certainly not the marketing companies. It's a direct financial burden on the long-term returns of investors. Combined with risks from warming seas and rising sea levels due to climate change, the effectiveness of current breakwaters is being seriously questioned. In 20 or 30 years, what will remain of this wonder besides expensive maintenance bills and an artificial ecosystem struggling against nature? Perhaps buying a ticket to a real natural beach in Hawaii is still a far smarter and more relaxing investment. Would you agree? Have you ever driven through an upscale neighborhood at 8 p.m. and felt that something was off? Not the sound of barking dogs, not children playing, but an eerie silence. At Palm Jumeirah, the wonder people often praise that silence is becoming a new trademark. It's called the ghost real estate phenomenon. Based on data up to early 2026, it is estimated that around 22% to 28% of villas on the Franz show no signs of regular occupancy. These aren't homes waiting for Airbnb guests or weekend vacation stays. These are literal dead houses, places where utility meters don't move and dust has taken over as the owner. You might wonder, who would throw tens of millions of dollars into a home only to leave it abandoned? The answer lies in the ownership structure. For wealthy elites from Russia, India, or Gulf countries, these villas are merely line items in an asset portfolio, a safe place to park cash rather than a home. According to multiple sources, a large portion of transactions here are conducted entirely in cash, after which the property falls into a prolonged hibernation. For them, owning an address on Palm Island is like putting a limited edition Rolex in a safe to watch its value rise, not to wear it daily. Imagine spending thousands of dollars to stay at an ultra-luxury resort like Atlantis, excited to gaze upon the shimmering fronds you've seen in Forbes magazine. But what's the reality? When night falls, what you see are rows of dark, lifeless houses. It doesn't feel like a vibrant elite community. It feels more like a scene from an Alfred Hitchcock movie. This prestige paradox is taking a toll on tourist psychology. The absence of human presence erodes both the sense of safety and community vitality. Even service businesses are starting to notice. Why open a cafe or a high-end grocery store on the Franz when no one is there to buy a loaf of bread or a cup from Starbucks? As a result, services are concentrated on the trunk, leaving the Franz isolated in terms of amenities. Luxury without life may just be an empty indulgence. The presence of these ghost properties is not just an aesthetic or emotional issue, it is a tangible economic risk. A house left unmaintained and unventilated in the harsh Gulf environment will quickly become a breeding ground for mold, leaks, and unwanted marine organisms. And in a tightly packed community, these technical issues don't stop at one property, they spread to neighboring homes like a contagious disease spillover effect. More concerning is the liquidity risk. When 25% of supply is held by absentee investors, we are witnessing an artificial scarcity. If tomorrow Dubai's tax or visa policies change, a wave of sell-offs from this group could cause the island's value to evaporate faster than it was built. Have you ever wondered why today's billionaires are quietly shifting capital to new names like Jumeirah Bay Island? The answer likely lies in refinement and practicality. While Palm Jumeirah is a massive maze with a tiring funnel-like structure, this new billionaire island features direct bridge connections, allowing access to DIF in under 10 minutes. No traffic, no noise, just absolute privacy alongside resorts like Bulgari Resort. More importantly, new developments here are built with next-generation salt-resistant materials instead of the ailing concrete of the previous decade. Or take Dubai Hills Estate, where people are no longer fascinated by so-called artificial sea views, but instead prefer lush 1-8, whole golf courses, and wellness-oriented living spaces. After 2024, the elite seem to be trading concrete on water for expansive green parks. Breathing fresh air on a green lawn may still be more appealing than smelling stagnant water at the tips of the Franz, wouldn't you agree? If you trust financial data more than glossy magazine ads, now is the time to pay attention. During 2024-2025, while property prices in emerging areas like Jumeirah Bay or Tilal Al Ghaf posted double-digit growth, Palm Jumeirah appears to be losing steam with modest growth below 5%. For the first time in over a decade, ROI, return on investment, here has fallen below the average of Dubai's ultra-luxury market. Why? Perhaps because the premium concept of Palm Island has become saturated. Villas designed in early 2000s classical styles are starting to feel outdated compared to the minimalist, smart home integrated designs of 2026. Palm Jumeirah is like an old IBM computer, it still runs, but no one wants to use it for million-dollar transactions anymore. Capital flows from the US and Europe tend to be pragmatic. Reports indicate that about 65% of today's ultra-wealthy prioritize projects with green and sustainable certifications. This is a major blow to Palm Jumeirah, an artificial island that consumes vast resources and struggles with opaque operating costs, service charges. Would you be willing to spend an additional 15-20% of a property's value just to renovate an aging villa on the Franz in hopes of competing with newer developments? That's a real capital lock-in risk many investors are facing. At present, it seems only the Crescent, with its ultra-modern new development, still retains some momentum. while the rest of the island is gradually fading into obscurity. Have you ever wondered what happens when ownership does not come with long-term attachment? In Dubai, spending millions of dollars on real estate may essentially be just a contract for conditional residency through the so-called golden visa, 10 years. It is not citizenship, and certainly not a permanent guarantee. Without a sense of identity or long-term political stake, international investors seem to treat their villas as time-bound financial instruments rather than an ancestral home. Instead of reinvesting in costly long-term structural maintenance, they often prioritize squeezing out short-term profits through platforms like Airbnb. With the UAE's attractive zero personal income tax policy, people appear more interested in pulling cash out quickly rather than putting it into reserve funds for major overhauls of quietly deteriorating infrastructure. There is a fairly clear sign that a project has peaked and is starting to decline, when the developer is no longer eager to build new projects but shifts focus to collecting fees. Take a look at the financial reports of Ecological. It seems they are transitioning from construction revenue to recurring revenue from management and service fees. In business, this phase is called harvesting. When land for expansion runs out, the simplest way to maintain financial figures is to increase service charges. Isn't it ironic to pay more in management fees, while the quality of roads and shared landscapes shows no corresponding improvement? In fact, transferring responsibility for structural repairs of villas to individual owners seems like a subtle way for developers to distance themselves from the island's long-term technical risks. Imagine a frond with residents from dozens of different countries. Reaching consensus on a large financial contribution to address stagnant water issues or reinforce shorelines becomes an administrative impossibility. Without a strong mandatory legal framework, one deteriorating villa owned by an absentee landlord can reduce the value of an entire row of luxury homes around it. It's like a domino effect. As brand prestige declines and short-term thinking takes over, Palm Jumeirah risks falling into a downward spiral that is hard to reverse. Smart money, always as sensitive as investors on Wall Street, seems to be quietly exiting in favor of projects with more centralized and sustainable management models, such as new private islands or eco-developments in Saudi Arabia. Ultimately, the value of these luxury properties appears to be suspended on immigration policies. If tomorrow the UAE changes its tax rules or residency conditions, will those short-term profits still exist? At that point, million-dollar villas could quickly turn into illiquid liabilities. Compared to mature markets like New York City or London, where homeowner associations hold real power in maintaining neighborhood standards, the governance structure at Palm Jumeirah seems increasingly outdated. Power lies with the developer, but responsibility falls on the owners. Such a structure may struggle to encourage any sustainable development toward a 2030 vision. You might start to wonder whether you are overpaying for a dream that has begun to show its age. While short-term villa rental prices here still sit at $1,500 to $5,000 per night, what you sometimes get is an HVAC system groaning under Gulf heat or weak water pressure, reminding you that this infrastructure is now approaching 20 years old. The contrast between glossy online marketing images and the real environment is becoming a gamble. Instead of the soothing sound of waves, you might wake up to machinery from periodic sand replenishment efforts meant to save eroding beaches. According to some surveys in early 2026, customer satisfaction here has dropped by 15% compared to a few years ago. Loyal guests seem to be seeking comfort in places like Lanai Islands or newer resorts in Ras Al Khaimah, where infrastructure has not yet been aged, and services still reflect the standard of an American Express Centurion experience. To cope with rising management fees from developers, property management companies appear to be quietly tightening their belts. Have you noticed slower response times for fixing a broken faucet or less frequent cleaning of private beaches? When companies cut staff to protect margins, the cost is your experience. Beach clubs that once symbolized exclusivity now sometimes feel as crowded as a public beach in Florida during peak season. Privacy, the most valuable asset of the elite, is gradually being diluted in favor of revenue figures. High-end travelers in 2026 are not just buying a place to sleep, they are buying an emotional state. And it's hard to feel inspired when surrounded by dark ghost houses and weathered concrete walls. The consequence is that Palm Jumeirah risks shifting from a sustainable resort destination into a one-time check-in location. As repeat visitor rates decline, property owners tend to lower standards to attract a broader customer base just to fill vacancies. This may be a deadly trap. When you try to please everyone, You end up pleasing none of the guests who truly matter. People often talk about Dubai's luxury, but few mention data from NASA and the INSAR system. According to the latest reports, Palm Jumeirah appears to be quietly subsiding at an average rate of about 0.2 inches per year. That number may sound small, like the thickness of a few issues of The New Yorker, but try doing the math over the next 20 years. The issue isn't just rising sea levels, it's that the island is compressing under the enormous weight of massive concrete loads. Engineers in the early 2000s may have been overly optimistic when estimating a safety margin of around 20 inches. As artificial sand formed from unstable carbonate sediments begins to show signs of liquefaction under warming and acidifying seawater, the foundations of beachfront villas may no longer be as solid as a new Cadillac. The ocean doesn't care about your bank balance. To protect nearly 7 miles of existing breakwaters from increasingly severe storms, billions of dollars will likely be needed to upgrade defensive infrastructure. And don't forget the massive forced drainage pumping stations, the only thing preventing the island from turning into a giant swimming pool during abnormal heavy rains, like the historic event of 2024. The real question is, who will pay for it? Will the developer Nakheel willingly cut into its profits to protect your home, or will they introduce a new cost category called a climate resilience fee? In a business environment where collective responsibility is often pushed around, it seems residents' wallets will be the final destination. You may love the ocean view, but insurers and banks are not that sentimental. In the US, we've already seen insurance companies withdraw from Florida and California due to natural disaster risks, and this scenario seems to be repeating itself in Dubai's frontline developments. Market data in 2026 shows that properties with high flood risk have already started to record sale prices 7% to 10% lower than elevated inland areas like Dubai Hills. Savvy investors, those who might carry an American Express black card, are beginning to prioritize climate resilience over glossy marketing. When a bank tightens mortgage conditions for a beachfront home, it's usually a sign that the game has changed. We are witnessing the obsolescence of the mindset of fighting nature with rigid concrete. While new projects in Saudi Arabia are experimenting with soft defense systems using mangroves and natural coral, Palm Jumeirah remains tied to an outdated, inflexible structure. In 20 years, will owners accept a scenario of strategic retreat, abandoning lower fronds to focus on preserving the more stable trunk? There is a possibility that Palm Jumeirah will go down in history, not as an eternal wonder, but as an expensive lesson in building on sand. We probably shouldn't expect Palm Jumeirah to disappear overnight like in Hollywood disaster movies. Reality is usually far more subtle and ironic. This wonder may still stand, but it seems to be gradually losing the soul and dominant status it held over the past 2 decades. The slow fall down being discussed here is not about concrete structures, but about symbolic value and commercial appeal. When systemic issues from suffocating traffic infrastructure to stagnant water ecosystems and rows of dark, ghost villas are not fundamentally resolved, Palm Jumeirah is becoming an expensive piece of jewelry that has lost its shine. It reminds us of a costly lesson in conquering nature at all costs. What is built on sand, and on blind faith in perpetual growth, can be washed away by the very forces that created it. Are you ready to bet millions of dollars on an island that is gradually becoming outdated, or do you believe it's time for smart money to find a more sustainable haven on solid ground? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Note: this isn't some crystal ball attempt to predict the exact date of a global meltdown. Think of it instead as a much-needed reality check on the systemic geopolitical risks that those glossy investment brochures conveniently choose to ignore. Thanks for watching till the end, and we'll catch you in the next video.